And welcome to the April 11th, 2022 regularly scheduled meeting of the Rockingham County Planning Board, which I now call to order. At this time, before we do that, let the record show that we have a quorum present to conduct business. Chair recognizes Mr. Corey Scott for our invocation.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to gather in this planning board meeting for Rockingham County. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve this community and grateful that for the trust that has been placed in us to make wise decisions that benefit both the citizens of the county and also the rules and the regulations that we are to abide by from the state. Help us, Father, to have wisdom and insight and understanding and patience that we might make decisions that will be in the best interest of all involved. And we pray for thy blessing upon all of our county leaders. Help them in their jobs to serve and to protect our county. And this we pray in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda as written.
I second.
Thank you. Meeting has been made and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. With no opposition, the agenda is adopted. The next item on the agenda is approval of the November 8th, 2021 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes for the November 8th, 2021 meeting as written.
Second.
No, we can't do that yet. I have one small correction on the next to the last page, last paragraph. I want to substitute the name Corey for the name James.
You said next to the last paragraph. I'm sorry.
Amend my motion to we accept the minutes with a correction in section 6, last paragraph, from Corey Fink to James Fink.
Sorry.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the amended minutes. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. There's no opposition, so the minutes are approved. At this time, staff has an announcement to make regarding a case that was continued.
Hey, everyone. I just wanted to make sure if anyone is here for case number 2022-007, which was the previously scheduled rezoning hearing for the Ram Loop and Simpson Road area. We will not be hearing that case tonight. It's been postponed at least until June. I don't think anyone here is for that, but just to be sure, we're hearing cases 4 through 6 tonight, and that one will be heard later this year. Good? Awesome.
Thank you. Excuse me. The following are the procedures for and guidelines for speakers tonight. Any and all persons who would like to speak regarding any case being heard by the planning board must sign the official case roster prior to the beginning of the meeting. Additionally, each speaker must be recognized by the presiding board member prior to speaking. When recognized, each speaker must approach the podium and state their name and address before speaking. Unless otherwise specified, all testimony, evidence, and comments should be directed to the board chairperson or presiding board member. Each case will be presented to the board by a member of the planning staff. Following the staff presentation, the case applicant will be given the opportunity to brief the board regarding the case. Following the applicant's presentation, those who have signed up to do so will be granted the opportunity to speak against or in support of the proposal. If needed, the board chairperson reserves the right to set time limits for each speaker. After hearing from the public, the applicant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal. This will be followed by board discussion, motions, and voting procedures. And now we call upon staff to introduce our first case, rezoning request 2022-04.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, is that better? Okay, but I don't want to yell into it. Sorry, guys. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. We had our little March recess, but back at work. So, as Chairman Sinowitz mentioned, our first case tonight is a rezoning request, number 2022-04. It's a request for a zoning map amendment from several districts, RA, RP, and LI, to residential protected conditional district. There are 2 tax pins. However, there are 2 portions of 1 tax pin that I'll point out on the maps as we move forward. The general location is around Friddle Road and adjacent to US 220, also just south of the sort of private road portion of Bennett Farm Road where it curves off from the state road. Huntsville and New Bethel Townships, this is a conditional rezoning. Excuse me. This is a vicinity map of the area in discussion, as you might imagine, in that southwest corridor. Hopefully I wanted to make sure you guys saw the complete zoning matrix in the area, and hopefully you can see it pretty well. If you look at this map and you look to the lower south-southeast and see the LI zoned parcel, and then across, that's Friddle Road, just to its north. The next parcel is also the same tax pin, just 2 different portions of it. It's a tax identifier more so than an actual parcel identifier. Additionally, parcel number 3 is the second tax pin. So all 3 of these technical parcels are what we're looking at tonight. This shows you the mix of the zoning in the area. Just to the south and southwest of this area are the recently rezoned South Rockingham Corporate Park areas. We also have, of course, lots of residential rezoning close by to the east, including what is now being built out as Collybrook Farm, the second wave of Collybrook. That sort of rectangular, blunt, hammer-shaped parcel, that's Collybrook Farm. In addition to the north and to the west, you see some more areas that have been rezoned for residential subdivisions, which is the purpose of this rezoning. The environmental map, how are those colors showing up for you guys? Are they okay?
That's fine.
I'm playing around with colors to make things a little more distinctive. So if you notice that you like something or don't like something, feel free to let me know. This is just the environmental features map. There is a creek that runs through a portion of the middle parcel. It is not associated with any kind of flood zone. There will be requirements for protected buffers around that creek, 30 feet on each side, but that's about it. This area is not located in a protected watershed. The future land use map pretty much supports this request wholeheartedly. It's in the G3 land class. G3 calls for a mix of medium to high density residential in mix with contiguous commercial and industrial uses and mixed use parcels. So this does fit well in the land use plan. Those were the general slides I wanted to go over. I did want to reference a couple of things in the staff report. If you guys don't mind turning to that with me right quick. Oh, there was a little typo I noticed in the location. It's on Fiddle Road and 220, but it's Huntsville and New Bethel townships, as I pointed out. The points about the G3 land use plan, they're what I'll mention on the next slide. I won't go into those into detail. Total acreage of this is just shy of about 80 acres. This is a conditional rezoning request, but it is not a conditional request in which certain conditions have been selected for exclusion. This is one in which all permitted uses in the district will be allowed and additional conditions have been requested and suggested both by the applicant and the staff. And I'll explain that a little bit more. Let me just advance to the land use plan slide where it talks about G3 land use plan area, mixed use centers and corridors, the recommendations for the types of development. I made a note here that Greenway Trail systems are recommended in this land class to provide links between neighborhoods and mixed use areas. This isn't something that we've suggested that we add as a condition at this point. It could be something that comes at the TRC review level, but it is something to consider. And this does not only apply to residential parcels in this area, this applies to anything in the G3 class, that there is a recommendation to link commercial and residential and other areas with greenways where possible. So it's something for the board to take into consideration. Now, speaking directly about the conditions, the applicant requested 2 specific conditions, and that's why I gave you that dimensional standards table sheet. There was a request for allowance for a minimum lot width at the building line of 40 feet. Otherwise, on a state road, it would be 100 feet. There's also been a request for a reduction of the required property line setback from what is typically 35 feet to 15 feet. At this point, I would ask you to refer to that handout that I gave you, that dimensional standards handout. If you'll look over towards the RP column, if you come down to the minimum lot width at building line, you'll see a little bit of a conflict. It says local road, major subdivision, minimum lot width 40 feet. State maintained road, 100 feet. Thank you, Julie. It's puzzling, right? So this was put together when the initial UDO has come out, and we are now realizing with the changes in density that are allowed with the ordinance that this needs to be updated. We're in the process of doing that, and we'll be bringing that to the board with some suggestions in the next month or two. But for now, that's sort of where this conflict comes from between this 40-foot and 100-foot minimum building width. If you'll scroll down a little bit longer, a little bit further, minimum front setback, local road, 15 feet, and just above that it said local road, major subdivision, but 2-lane state maintained road is 35 feet. The point here is that initially as these roads are built out, they will be maintained by the developer and may be maintained by the homeowners association at some point before they get turned over to state maintenance. So the guidance in the dimensional standards table isn't very clear. And that's why we had a pre-application discussion with the applicant, and the applicant decided to ask for these specific lot sizes and this specific setback. And I'll get to questions for you in a moment. With that, planning staff recommended if the building width line and the setback line is approved, we're also recommending a conditional approval to take the standard sideline property setback from 10 feet down to 5 feet. Because if we don't, we're going to end up with 20-foot house envelopes. And 5 feet on each property line meets standard residential building code for fire clearance, ingress, egress, and that kind of thing. And allows for more flexibility if this is the way we choose to go. Additionally, we recommended one of 2 options, that either a traffic analysis be completed by an independent group prior to the development to identify needs and opportunities, or a written traffic assessment from the local NCDOT Division 7. I believe your packet says 8. That's a typo. It's Division 7 District Office, to be completed prior to development providing a copy to us in planning and instituting any recommended measures for improvement. This, of course, will also work through step by step the TRC process as we move forward. So with that, that's the short of it. I bet you guys have some questions. I'll be glad to answer.
Boy, 40-foot lot width seems mighty slim.
It's small, but it was included in the dimensional standards table when the ordinance was adopted. It had been adopted. I don't know if you recall, Paul. This dimensional standards table was a significant revision from the one that was submitted with the original UDO last year in July, because the one in the original UDO was based almost wholly on a thoroughfare plan basis. And I rapidly recognized we don't have a thoroughfare plan, and so the committee, we all sat down and as quickly and best as we could to get this thing adopted, came up with the best compromise we could, which has worked okay in a lot of places. But 40 is fairly small. It allows for, the 40 was meant to allow for things like cottage courts, little bungalow courts, things like that within major subdivisions.
Yeah.
The intent was good, but I don't think the full scope of planning around it was good. And it was based off of, if we did have a thoroughfare plan that says, this is a minor local road, this is a minor collector, this is a collector, this is an arterial, we don't have that here. We simply don't, and urban areas do. That essentially was an urban plan that came down that we had to fix pretty quickly.
Yeah, I do recall some of the discussions. I guess I just didn't realize that it was going to impact single-family dwellings at the time.
Right. So, yeah.
But it is now.
It is now, and if you do recall, too, there was also a bit of correction that we had to make in the residential mixed district being 6 dwelling units per acre with water and sewer, and this is the version of the residential mixed district that allows townhomes in addition to single families, not multifamily, but townhomes and single family, and RP. So we added RP, this dimension, this density allowance of 5 in RP versus 6 in RM, which is slightly smaller, which allows for, the point of that is not to say necessarily that every single lot can be teeny tiny, even though that kind of can happen. But the point of that is to allow, the point is to flexibility within the development. One lot might be 35,000 square feet, but a few lots over here in this grouping would be smaller. It's an average density.
You're right.
And in no way is it actually feasible out on the ground, given watersheds and creek setbacks and roads and rights-of-way, to actually ever reach that maximum density. I won't speak to the amount of planned units at this point. The applicants are here and will be speaking after me. They've signed in.
Well, looking at the map of the proposed map change amendment, if you look at the density of all the homes surrounding the area, including Colebrook, they are kind of jammed one right on top of the other. So
They're finally there. I don't know if you recall, in the former ordinance with public water in the RP subdivision, the minimum lot size went down to around 20,000 square feet. It was less than half an acre.
yeah,
So that would have been a density of about 2 units per acre. This, with the roadways and the creek setback and all these things, actually only ends up being, when you really look at it as sort of a tight formation, of about 3, give or take, per acre. So it's not that much denser,
yeah.
but it is denser. It is denser, and it would be smaller lots. We have not come up yet with our final recommendations for the changes in the dimensional standards table, but hopefully when we do, Margie and I have been working on it, I think it'll make it a lot clearer for moving forward, and we'll avoid having ask for conditional approvals in some cases.
do you have an idea of approximately how many lots this 80 acres is going to yield, given these conditions for setback and minimum lot?
I will give you the original. We received an original. I did not publish it because things have changed. We received an original concept plan that called for, I don't remember how many lots, but it was higher 100s, with the addition of the new parcel, the Knight Farm parcel, to I forgot their names, the Kent Knight parcel to the north of that. I believe the total plan is for a very low 200 lots. And I'll let the applicants confirm that.
Okay.
The engineering, survey and engineering firm is here, and an applicant from Allied is actually here also.
Okay, good.
We've been working with them really closely. We've had pre-application phone calls. We've all talked about this and agreed, the thesis, what they wanted, and this will be the addition of what we would like to see, and that it would be a little bit unique, but that we could discuss it, that the land use plan supports it overall. But keep in mind that since we have discussed these conditions, other conditions may be considered, asked of, or, saying we really can't approve it unless we have this condition. So are those things that the board can, decide in speaking more about it with the applicants and maybe folks from the area and that kind of thing. I think there are a few folks from the area signed up.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the land use plan, this area, when we looked at it, it seemed to be one of those clusters. Mm-hmm. What is the proximity? And I know that's not an exact, but it seemed like to me that when the concept in the land use plan of this mixed, sort of mixed use where there would be some green areas, some, higher density. How close is this to one of those cluster areas?
It's a fair question. We do have a definition of what is a clustered development that comes primarily from our watershed ordinance, not primarily from our zoning ordinance. I believe there might have been a goal to better outline it in the zoning ordinance by the time it came down, but didn't get fully realized, like several things that we've had to realize ourselves as we go along. But there was also a goal in creating subdivisions like this with these high densities, that they would also be accompanied by conservation areas, that there would be conservation subdivisions. Some of that changed during the process of development later on. Once I came on board, we had the ordinance come down. We had several advisory committee meetings. Some of those things were changed. Some of those things were removed. At this point, we don't have a technical subdivision cluster development in the zoning or subdivision ordinance. We do have guidelines from the watershed ordinance, and we have a definition of what a cluster subdevelopment is. This one doesn't really meet that definition.
Okay.
If that helps.
Would this request, in your opinion, sort of fulfill, if the goal was to create communities like this, it looks to me like the 40-foot that is a small lot, and bringing back the setback and the reduction of the property line, does that accomplish that sort of notion or goal?
I think it does to a degree. One thing that I think will be seen as more of a concept plan is developed for more individual lots is that many of the lots are significantly deeper than they are wide.
Okay.
So the 15-foot setback is reasonable enough to ask for. It's up to you guys to decide. But there is depth on these lots.
Okay.
If you think about a lot that is 100 feet across front and back,
Yeah.
and 200 feet deep, that's a half-acre lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you quarter that, 50 feet on the front, 100 on the side, you're getting kind of close. Down when you're talking about 100 length, 100 depth, you're getting kind of close to this. That's a quarter acre. That's actually a large urban lot in some cases. So it is different. We're talking about Rockingham County standards here, but we're talking about a new generation of standards at the same time. So I do think it's possible to see this as a clustered neighborhood, to develop it in such a fashion. We don't have necessarily requirements in the ordinance for open space, park space, dog parks, pools, pavilions. But we do ask that during the TRC process. And most developers know and understand people who live in the communities want those amenities anyway.
Right.
They want to dedicate some space for that.
Well, this just seems like the first one that I've seen that we've really
Getting that
sort
close
of,
to.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
getting specific instead of conceptual.
Real specific. And the same thing will be happening, I think, in the near future and beyond that.
Okay.
And part of it is, again, to make it the best it can possibly be while at the same time meeting the needs of the developer and the needs of the community. It's a tough balance sometimes, but given the pressure that we have and given that that we are open to this and given that we have targeted this area as an area for denser development, this is not necessarily an unreasonable request. So yeah, I see your point. If you kind of want to think about the concept drawing that LGI presented when they submitted their rezoning request late last year, it sort of proposes that village concept, that there are pieces and parts
That's
of
what
it.
was. Yeah.
This isn't necessarily that different, except that in the LGI concept, they went for residential mix, which allows townhomes. And so townhomes is what gets you that extra bit of density in residential mix. And we will be having more townhome requests coming. I already have pending applications, so they're coming too.
Cool.
Any other questions for Mr. Cochran?
Yeah, so what you're saying is that this structure or this setup doesn't really exist yet in our county?
It doesn't.
So
Think
this will be the first time, and so we're setting a precedent here in some
In
ways?
some ways, yeah. In some ways we would be. However, keep in mind, even though we're setting a precedent, let's say, this is just for argument's sake, the board decides that all these conditions are good, and maybe we want to add one or two more, maybe not. Each case for conditional rezoning has unique characteristics. It doesn't mean that because this one might be suited for approval of those conditions or not suited for approval of those conditions, that another one would be based on several factors: topography, ingress, egress, and access.
We have to go on a
Several number of
case-by-case
things.
basis.
Yeah. So it's a legislative precedent, because this is a legislative hearing, right? This is a rezoning. So it doesn't really truly set a precedent. However, if approved in some fashion, it does create a subdivision unlike one we have yet seen. That's fair, I think, to say. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Did you say at first, the first site plan or that was presented to you or that you saw conceptual, there were hundreds,
I wish I don't.
but now it's down to,
I want to say it was.
It was.
Do you remember?
It was 196 on the
I wanted
original
to say
plat.
180, 190.
It was in the 190s. The original site plan, however, did not include the Knight property in the north.
Right.
That's where the added lots come from.
And that's why we don't have a complete conceptual plan tonight, because that came very late in the application process, and it wasn't time to put together a full concept plan.
and there's no conditions on this right now. In other words, everything that's permitted in the RP land use, none of those have been taken out. So
Right.
anything that's permitted could be put there.
Exactly.
And then
However,
there's
I
no
will say-
other conditions right now.
Right now, right. As it stands, the requested conditions are in addition to all other permitted uses in the RP district. If there is a use in the RP district that may not mesh well, that pops out at any planning board member, this is now open to conditional consideration on all fronts. That's sort of the nature of a conditional rezoning.
Yeah, the dimensional standards table is extracted from the UDO. This table comes right out of the
I was
UDO.
talking about everything permitted in the.
She's talking about permitted use list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, people in neighborhoods or the community don't know that this could be there, this could be there, this could be there, this could be there, because it hasn't been taken out.
Right.
So anything that's permitted at this point on this table could be,
Would
even
be
though they're
permitted.
talking housing, but I mean, I think this people need to be made aware that there's some things on here that
There could be, that's a fair statement. I will say, when it comes to lists of permitted uses per zoning district, and we look at RA, RP, RM, especially I'll just stick to residential, there are way more uses allowed in RA than there are in RP. RP is meant strictly for single-family detached residential development. So that does narrow the focus of what uses are allowed versus something like an RA district where you have a mix of agricultural and residential uses, or even a mixed-use conditional district where you might have some commercial mixed in with some residential, which we haven't seen yet, but we're gonna.
It's on the way.
Yeah. So it's a fair point, but do keep in mind that the RP district is the most limited of all the residential districts, and I would argue the most limited of all districts in uses except for perhaps rural commercial, probably, if that helps.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, and the applicants are here. They've signed him.
I only have 2 signatures on the sign-up sheet for this case.
Brent
Nancy
and-
Bennett and Brett Nelson, or
Okay. Is there a particular slide that you want me to leave this on, Brent? Yeah. Leave it on this one?
One of the maps.
On one of the maps? Probably a good idea. I'll leave it on the current zoning map.
Yeah.
There we go.
Excellent. All right.
the record, please state your name and address.
Absolutely, yeah. It's Brent Neeson. My address is 8518 Triad Drive, Colfax, North Carolina. I'm with FEI, which is an engineering consulting firm, and am the applicant and on behalf of the applicant of Allied Development. So first, just want to thank everyone for being here, and then Lynn and the planning staff, thanks for putting all this together. Wanted to kind of reiterate some of those points and some of those concerns about the lot dimensions for this. So yes, we are within our permitted uses in similar situations for a 40-foot width on the lot with a 15-foot setback based on the roads. That is not the intent of what we have. Our intent is to be in between 50 and 60 feet for that lot width. And so that, along with, as what Lynn was talking about, with the topography and with the water creek going through, that 5 dwelling units per acre, we won't be that high. It's just the land does not yield for that amount. So what we're looking at, to kind of reiterate some of those points of the questions of lot count. So we are actually about 300 lots with the Knight property addition. That still brings us about 3.5, a little in that range for dwelling units per acre. So again, well below that 5 dwelling units per acre max that's allowed. And other points to kind of talk about, we've worked really closely with the planning staff, with the Rockingham County Engineering Department, with the Department of Transportation and CDOT to try and including the fire marshal as well, to come up with a plan and make sure that we are not going to go outside the growth plan and also defer from the UDO that's been set up. So with this plan, there's like use in other areas. This is not intended to be a heavy, invasive plan. This is supposed to be a single-family residential for this area that provides just that residential use for the area. So I'll keep it brief, and I can, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer that, or we can go on. So thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mr. Neeson?
I have one.
Nice as Cindy Hayworth.
Mr. Neeson, you said that the 40 lot width was not something that you were really looking at. It was going to be between 50 and 60. Is that what you said?
That's correct, yes. And
Okay.
oh, go ahead.
I have a question.
Chair recognizes Julie Talbert.
In this plan, if, this is a residential subdivision, what's your time frame to build that out?
The timeframe would be, and obviously to go along with this is going to be a phased plan. Obviously, you can't just throw these kind of houses up every day. So looking for getting through the permitting process, the CDs, coordinating with all the planning staff, engineering department, DOT, that's about a 6-month process. So after going through the zoning and starting that process, it would be probably later this fall.
And what's the estimated time of build-out to completion?
It really depends on the phasing and, obviously there's a lot that goes into construction, so I can't really speak to that right now. But obviously doing this in a phase system, I believe we have about 4 or 5 phases. And you have these processes that we have to go through for each separate phase to go through and make sure that we are planning and building it correctly according to the standards set by the county, NCDEQ, and NCDOT. So.
How many houses, say, in the first phase, do you think?
That is subject to change. We're thinking about 50 right now, and that's based on requirements from the fire marshal. But that number has not been officially set yet.
This is probably a 5 or 6 year build-out.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Neeson?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes James Fink.
I'm particularly interested in the Greenway Trail systems. Can you speak to me a little bit about that? Because that's being that we're in a rural area, I think that's important that we consider that in any development that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Lynn was kind of saying, that gets more developed in the TRC process and the design process with that. So the intent is, as well, and thank you for bringing that up, we do plan on having common areas. Obviously, when you aren't maximizing the site, based on topography or not, it lends to some green areas and some greenway trails to come into that. So definitely building in some common area for the uses within the neighborhood and the community is a priority for us, and we'll work more in detail with the planning staff on that.
What type of trails do you envision?
I can't really speak to exactly what those trails will look like, but obviously walking trails of some sort to provide that interconnectivity would be what we were looking for.
Biking possibly?
I'm sorry?
Biking possibly also?
That could be a possibility, yeah. Depends what kind of bike you have.
Bicycle.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? We'll call the signed speakers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You will have a chance for rebuttal if you wish. Nancy Bennett. For the record, please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Nancy Bennett. My address is 815 Bennett Farm Road in Stokesdale.
Now, what is it that you'd like the planning board to know?
I have several concerns regarding this particular subdivision. One being where it backs up to the private Bennett Farm Road access. I'm concerned whether or not the subdivision is going to have access going into it from Bennett Farm Road. If that's the case, then Bennett Farm Road needs to be updated because at that point it is a graveled private road.
Time?
Yes. I'm also concerned about the amount of houses going up in this area. Where I'm at on Bennett Farm Road, our lots are basically an acre and a half for the most part of them. Most of them are mobile homes, whether it be single wides or double wides. In this type of development, I understand it is single family homes, but it sounds like they're going to be more on top of each other, therefore bringing more people into the community. I'm sure that the neighbors have gotten used to living out into the county. If we wanted to live in a city, we would have moved into the city. You know, I've just been in this area for 8 months now. I used to live in Greensboro, and I moved out of Greensboro for that specific reason. I wanted out to have my own property, to be able to do what I wanted to without neighbors being on top of me. With this type of development, I feel that's what's going to happen. I'm also concerned about the tax value of my property going up in contingent to the reevaluation because of this development. And just, the way of life in general in that area. Like I said, it's county, it's rural. If we wanted a housing development out there, we would have stayed in the city. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Well, let me just answer part of your question. When you talk about the congestion or cluster of houses being close together and everything, a state law was passed a few years ago that required every town, city, and county in the state of North Carolina to redraw their land use plans and their unified development ordinances to, especially in rural areas, to convert from using so much rural land for a single house. That just chews up all the agricultural land. So rather than having a minimum lot size, which up until the law was changed was an acre per house, the state mandated that we switch to a density formula of so many houses per acre. And that way we're not using up so much of the land. Under the old system, if you wanted to build 10 houses, you needed 10 acres. And that's a lot of land. Whereas now you can put those 10 houses on 2.5 acres. So, and that leaves the other 8 acres free for either conservation or farming or a number of other uses. So that's why you're seeing this type of development in that area.
Okay.
The other thing that's attracting development in that area is it does have public water and sewer. And the minimum lot size is, even though it can be smaller than an acre per lot, the lot sizes do increase if you have to have septic and well water. I hope that helps answer some of your question.
It does. I did not realize that the state had made the counties, redo their zoning regulations.
The previous land use laws in North Carolina were, some of the portions of those laws date back, believe it or not, to the post-Reconstruction area right after the Civil War. And the most modern one was drafted in 1907. So, it was so outdated that it just needed updating, and
Okay.
that's when all this was done.
Okay. But again, my main concerns are really, like the roadways, how they're going to get into this development. Are we going to have a lot of congestion in that area? Are we going to have a lot of noise in that area? Because where I'm at on Bennett Farm Road, I'm down a little bit, and I don't have that noise versus being in an apartment complex, in a subdivision, or living right on the side of a highway,
Right.
an interstate. I can hear a little bit of the interstate noise, but I can deal with that.
Yeah.
I just think that it needs to be reevaluated. I would agree that some development be go in there, but just not as many.
Depending where some of the houses are, they may actually act as a noise barrier for you. The other thing is, Mr. Nasom, could you answer her question as to whether or not any of the lots are going to have a driveway off Bennett Farm Road?
I can. The intent with that right now is that it will not have access off Bennett Farm Road. There will be connecting streets to Bennett Farm, and I can do this all in rebuttal if you'd like me to. But no, they will not have access to Bennett Farm Road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The lots, being the individual lots, as you're
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah.
Questions for Ms. Bennett? Thank you very much. There are no other speakers signed up, so Mr. Neeson, you have a chance for rebuttal if you wish.
So to the concerns that came up, or a few of them, but one we just addressed of the lots opening up to Bennett Farm Road. The intention is not for the lots to open up to Bennett Farm Road. That it's going to be internal. There will be access points to Bennett Farm Road, excuse me, but that is for actual connecting streets and not for the individual lots. A portion of that being that Bennett Farm Road there is private and is gravel. It actually, to be a public right-of-way and DOT to take it over, it has to be updated, and that cost is, going to be absorbed into the development. So that update to the state minimum design criteria is part of that coordination with NCDOT. And yes, as it was mentioned, this development may not be the typical use of what is there now, but it is well within the growth plan and that corridor for that G3 land use, as you stated. So, and if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer that as well.
Chair recognizes Cindy Hayward.
I thought the developer was going to make a presentation. Are you representing the developer?
Yes, I am.
In other words, so if,
Sorry.
I'm a little bit, I want to go back, if I may, to the 40-foot you're requesting, but you actually think it will be more between 50 and 60. I'm talking about the front, the width.
Right.
Why didn't you ask for 60 instead of coming in at 40? That might have been a little easier to swallow than the 40. And if you are looking towards 60, would you make that a condition that the lot width can be no less than 60?
Sure, I can explain why we did the 40. So the ordinance and how it's written, as the planning staff was discussing, was a little skewed on how it represented state-maintained roads being public right-of-way and local collector roads, and to that extent. So our intention was to meet the requirement of what the UDO said with those conditions, and that is why that minimum is in there for the flexibility in this plan. So, because again, we are, not in that in-depth design phase now, but having the flexibility going forward in the future.
Indeed.
Yeah, I understand that.
He's only asking for what's already in the ordinance.
Right, but not for a highway or the road. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm talking about state maintained.
There's not going to be access off 220 into the subdivision. You're going to have to go up Friddle Farm Road to get to it. I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
It appears, members, that the criteria that the applicant is asking for is covered by what's in the current UDO, and I don't see where the other conditions are prohibitive of this development moving forward. That being said,
Mr. Chair, if I may, real
Yes.
quick. We as staff did ask for the condition that if it is a 40-foot lot and it goes to a state road, it would have a 5-foot setback, but that is intended only for those lots that are required to be 40 feet. So if this does move forward that way, any lots larger than the 40, we're trying to get to that 30-foot building envelope, which would be allowed with a 50-foot lot with our 10-foot setbacks, but at a 40-foot, it wouldn't be. So if y'all do move forward with that part of the conditions, I just request that that be clear, that that's only for any lots that are required to be 40 feet in their design and can't be made larger.
conditions listed in the staff report.
The condition number 3 talks about the approval of the lot width and setbacks allowances. I think the way to handle that would just to be for the planning board to add a statement with the approval of lot width and setbacks allowances of 40 feet at the building line, these will be required. For any other lots, standard setbacks will apply. For any lots larger.
And please.
Basically, if you look at number 3, where we're talking about reducing the side setback from 10 to 5 feet, that will only apply to any lots that might be built to the 40 feet building line minimum. For any lots 50 feet wide or larger, the standard setbacks can still apply and still have a reasonable house envelope.
Standard setbacks will apply.
That's what I'm saying, and that's
Not
what
can, but will.
will always apply. So basically, we're saying that this condition,
I was just amending that one word in his sentence
It's
that
true.
you were writing down.
I'm gonna handle this. I got it.
You got it, Julie, you got it.
I think I
you got it.
think I got it. I think I got it.
All right, Julie.
For the fourth condition,
Be a slight of language here, but I think we got it.
the recommendation of a traffic impact analysis is what staff would prefer, or the condition of a TIA and the number 4. But there's the option of to either let DOT handle it with their own analysis or have an independent party. We would prefer the independent party, but that's not a requirement in our ordinances at all. So that's why it's up to y'all to make that decision.
Go with DOT.
Go with DOT?
They're the ones that sit in on all the TRC stuff.
All right.
Are you ready to make a motion?
Apparently.
Is that what you're building up to?
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. The Rockingham County Planning Board has reviewed case number 2022-04, rezoning to residential protected conditional district RP-CD, and adopts the following statements as required by NCGS 160D. After considering the Rockingham County adopted comprehensive plans, the Rockingham County Planning Board recommends approval of case number 2022-04. This action is consistent with the adopted Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. This zoning amendment is supported by the intent and descriptions of the G3 land class. The permit uses the residential protected conditional district RP-CD districts are compatible with the character of existing developments on adjacent parcels and in the neighborhood, and the proposed rezoning conforms to the guidelines, goals, and requirements of the Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, G3 land use, and further land use map. The board considers this action in adopting the proposed zoning amendment to be reasonable because the size of the parcel is appropriate for the RPCD district. The proposed uses allow the district in the district are appropriate for the land, considering its effect on the landowners, neighbors, and community. And the subject property abuts others that are currently zoned light industrial, residential, agricultural. Nearby parcels are zoned for mixed residential, agricultural, commercial, institutional, and industrial uses. The residential protected condition district RPCD rezoning is not discordant with the zoning characteristic of the area. On balance, the following factors: size of the tract in question, the compatibility of the zoning action with the comprehensive plan, the benefits and detriments resulting from zoning action, the owner of the newly permitted property, neighbors, and the surrounding community, and the relationship between the envisioned permit uses and the uses currently present in adjacent tracts weigh in favor of approving the proposed zoning amendment. Under additional comments, as I cannot remember the specifics of which the county planners okay.
Just read these full.
Okay. So our recommendations for conditions are the allowance for minimum lot width at the building line of 40 feet. Otherwise, the minimum lot width at the building line for lots with frontage along 2-lane state-maintained roads is 100 feet. Reduction of the required front property line setbacks on what will be state-maintained roads from 35 to 15 feet with approval of lot width and setback allowances. Staff would recommend approval of a conditional reduction of side yard setbacks from the standard 10 to 5 feet. This will allow a minimum of 30 feet structure envelope per lot. supporting more flexibility in land design while maintaining density. We also recommend that a written traffic assessment from the local NCDOT Division 7 District Office complete prior to development, providing a copy to the community development staff, and instituting any recommendations and measures for approved access, connectivity, and vehicular mobility. Did I get all that in?
I second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve a zoning map change for the property described in case number 2022-04. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. It appears there's no opposition, so the amendment is approved. Now, gentlemen, what this means is that the planning board will make a recommendation to the county commissioners for their approval, but as you know, they have the final say. And they'll be voting on this matter when, Lynn?
About the 16th.
On the 16th of May.
Sorry.
The next case on the agenda is case number 2022-05, and we'll call upon staff at this time to introduce the particulars.
Corey, you got the easy part on that motion, just so you know. Julie had the hard part. And I don't know, I was going to point out something in the packet too, that Margie's idea, I think it's a great idea, where we had formerly had the reasonableness and consistency statements that was approval, consistent, approval, not consistent, disapproval, not consistent. Anyway, we're not going to bring anything to you that is going to be approval inconsistent. Now, if during the process of something that happens, that can happen. But kind of from here forward, we're just going to, unless there's something tricky, and we are recommending something specifically for approval that is discordant with the current plan at the time, we'll include that sheet. And I have a plan to make this sheet shorter, so you might be happy about that.
Yes,
It's just a
please.
I was reading the statutes today to see if I can shorten it up a little bit for y'all.
I think Julie just set a record for the longest,
she did.
longest motion ever made.
Good, I was impressed.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
So-
we've had more stuff to read.
Had more conditions than that before. So, literally moving across Highway 220, it takes us to case 2022-05. This is a request for zoning amendment from RA to light industrial. It's two pins, and each pin has two portions, bordering and surrounding Sylvania Road and Boone Road, and abutting all the way up to US 220. The Huntsville Township, this is a straight rezoning. It is not a conditional rezoning. This is a marker for the vicinity. As you can see, not very far at all from our last rezoning request. This is the area to be rezoned. The highlighted purple area is what you have to look at a little closely. There's the northernmost parcel portion, and then the parcel across Sylvania Road, they have the same tax pin. And then Boone Road has a parcel on each side, and they are the same tax pin. That's what can be a little bit confusing. I had to look at it 2 or 3 times when I was preparing the packet to make sure I got it right. That has to do with how tax identifies parcels and how we delineate parcels in planning and zoning. But this is the zoning matrix in the area, very similar to the other one we just looked at. I will point out these parcels are directly north and west of the current South Rockingham Corporate Park, those that have been rezoned a couple of years ago, 2 of which are in development right now. These parcels are all in the same ownership, South Rockingham Corporate Park. Thus, the owner requesting it. The attorney is here. I believe I saw Mr. Leonard, who's available. We do have, on the environmental map, we've got some creeks, some water areas that we'll have to take a look at it when it comes time for technical review. A portion of the Boone Road parcel is in the Troublesome Creek watershed. There will be some density limitations that'll have to be considered on portions of these parcels when the time comes for development. The Troublesome Creek watershed 3 is what I would call moderately strict. It's not the strictest, but it's not the most lenient. So there are options for different ways of doing balance of watershed and sort of working that out, but there'll definitely be attention paid to that as we move forward with development of these parcels. This area is primarily located in the G3 land class in the US 220 corridor. The Boone Road area is sort of a little bit more in the G2. In these transition areas between G2 and G3, there is no conflict in this sort of development. G2 is primarily targeted for medium density residential, some measure of commercial, some measure of industrial. The land use plan indicates that those are appropriate within the G2 land use plan, most definitely appropriate in the G3 area. The same, I don't know if I put it in here or not, but the same statement about the greenways and trails applies here too. Just keep that in mind. G3 land use class characterized by mixed use commercial, institutional, and light industrial development, extends along Highway 220 and is in Rockingham County's strategic growth area. The land use plan encourages uses along Highway 220 that will ensure that Southern Rockingham County will not predominantly be a bedroom community. That point of that statement in the land use plan is that there should be a mix of uses here, not just residential uses. There should be industrial, there should be commercial, well thought out and well planned, but it should include all those things. This is not a conditional rezoning. We have not recommended any conditions. I just wanted to see if there was anything else that jumped out at me from the staff report I might wanted to make a note of. I don't think there is, other than the fact that we've got some waterways we'll have to pay attention to in the watershed itself. Otherwise, it's just pretty straightforward, straight rezoning request, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. And of course, I have to make this statement. Since this is a straight rezoning request, no conditions can be considered when making the decision for the request. Even if they are discussed and brought up, you have to consider all uses in the RA district and all uses in the light industrial use district when making your decision.
Any questions for Mr. Cochran? Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Good.
The representative of the applicant is here.
I believe so. Mr. Leonard, did you sign in, sir? Okay, great.
Mr. Leonard, for the record, would you please state your name and address?
Yes, sir. I'm Al Leonard, 201 North Elm Street, Suite 201, Greensboro. And I've got just a few little handouts
Oh, I can give that one.
this way.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Al Leonard. I'm Senior Vice President with the Carroll Companies. Good to be here, and thank you for your time and efforts. And we've been before you before on these properties, and the handout I gave you is just a kind of a map showing what you've seen in your presentation. The green areas are the upper green areas are what's before you tonight. The blue area on there is the Ontex facility. The orange area is the spec building we're building now, and in some conversations with some users on that. The green area beside the Ontex facility, I believe, has already been zoned as part of the Ontex site. The first photo is just a photo of Ontex at night, showing you how that facility looks. The next one's during the day, during a snow event. The next one is a picture of the spec building we're building across the street. So I show these just to show the quality of what we're doing. We own it. I've been to multiple states and looked at different users that have been looking at our sites in the area, and we've turned away some different folks because of noise issues or smell issues or things of that nature. We want something that's going to be compatible to what you see with the Ontex facility and the spec building facility that we're building. We're in conversations now with the fire department. We're getting ready to convey them a parcel beside the water tower lot, so they'll have a facility in the area as well. The wetlands and streams, we've had our wetland and stream consultants to analyze all of our parcels, so we're aware with what features are there that we've got to work around and work with. So we're on top of that as well. Evan Stone is here. He got here a little late. I'm not sure he wanted to say anything, but he didn't get a chance to sign up if he did. He's vice president of our development division for the industrial group. So, and I'll be brief. The staff analysis in 6B, C, and D kind of explain what I can stand here and tell you about as far as the areas that are before you tonight and how they fit into the areas that we're looking at. So we're here, we're answer any questions you may have, and again, appreciate your time.
One, as a matter of personal curiosity, is the Ontex building finished yet?
Yes, sir. They actually occupied the building back in October, November.
Oh, wow.
So they're manufacturing. I don't know how much I can say or not, but I know there's lines up inside the facility, and it's a very state-of-the-art type facility if you ever get a chance to go through it.
I remember the board approving the spec building here. The picture is familiar, but
If you've been by it lately, it's up and painted, and we're working on the roof. And between the two, we've got about $40 to $50 million in the buildings and the land just on those two projects.
yeah. Any questions for Mr. Leonard? Okay, thanks. And you said Mr. Stone was here? Do you wish to speak, sir?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then we'll get to the speakers that have signed up. Daryl, is it Ahern? Ahern? Yes, sir. And for the record, would you please state your name and address?
Yes, sir. Darrell Ahern or Ahern, 231 Boone Road, also owner of 235 Boone Road, which is directly west in front of 231. And I am the property at the south of the property being discussed here. I adjoin the property. My concern is protecting this area that has been previously designated as residential protected. I want to have protection for well waters. By the way, I know of 4 wells in that particular area. 2 wells are 40 foot deep. 1 well is approximately 120 feet deep. My well is approximately 500 feet deep. I just want to make sure that we protect the water in that area.
The utilities to this facility, or any facilities built in what the applicant is asking for, will be served by public water, county water and sewer.
Right. I just want to make sure any waste doesn't affect us. But again, because of the shallow wells, and we are on wells. Currently, on the east side of Boone Road, there is a fiber optic cable. On the west side of Boone Road is currently gas pipeline, okay? Those are two things that they'll have to be aware of. From previous planning board meetings, and this has been several years back, this area was typically considered critical watershed for Reidsville, okay? Because we are at the headwaters of Troublesome Creek. And it was at that time designated critical watershed, okay? The gentleman from the planning board today said it was more moderate. And I just wanted to say that in the past, it's always been considered critical, okay? I want to see that we have protections as far as like a barrier or something for sight or noise in our area, because again, I'm directly adjacent to this property. And I have two properties that are adjacent to this property. The other concern, which is a minor concern, I've tried to call the number on the signs for sale and have not received replies. But when this was terraced years ago, I won't mention the owner's name at that time, but when it was previously terraced in that area, there was a low spot adjoining my property, and it's been growing and segmenting to where we basically got 3 large mud holes that could attract mosquitoes and things of this nature. And I'd like the new owners to remedy that situation also. That's basically my concerns. I noticed I had my next door neighbor who came in late because they were working late. And I don't know if they have any concerns. They did not have a chance to sign up for speaking to the board because, again, they worked late and were not able to get here in time to sign up. So if it was possible and if they desire, I'd like the board to grant them an opportunity to speak if they have further concerns. That's basically my concern. Just want to protect the property itself.
Let me assure you, sir, that the concerns that you have are legitimate and that they are addressed at the time that the site plans are submitted to a body in the county called the Technical Review Committee. And that committee is comprised of a representative from this board, county engineer, fire marshal, environmental, the North Carolina Department of Energy or Environmental Quality. There's 14 or 15 people that sit on this committee that review those plans. And at that time, things like buffers for noise, for visual effect or anything like that, they're all taken into consideration.
Could I ask that we be made aware of their considerations when that happens, we as neighbors?
Well, the Technical Review Committee is not really a public meeting.
Right.
It's a meeting that decides whether or not the site plans are acceptable under the county guidelines, the Unified Development Ordinance, fire marshal's regulation. Even the post office has input as far as numbering the lots or houses, and it's extensive, I can assure you. I'm on it, and the meetings are lengthy. The plans are scrutinized to the smallest detail.
I was just hoping that we would be informed of any requirements that they would need at that time for noise and that type of thing.
If I can interject on that one, our ordinance has requirements for buffering, landscaping, and screening. They'll have to meet those minimum standards for any commercial development and setbacks and whatnot. There'll be no additional conditions that the TRC places on them other than what the ordinance requires. since this is not a conditional rezoning, that we can't add things that's not in the ordinance, but we will enforce what is in the ordinance. Also, we will be posting on public notices on the website for when these TRC meetings happen. So the public will be invited to call us or email us and ask us either the results or, submit any comments that they'd like to that may have some bearing or not. So there'll be opportunities for that.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that the staff send me a copy of the ordinance that he's referring to?
Oh, you can get it on the website. It's on the web.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just walk in our offices, we'll be happy to print you off a piece.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. I'm probably going to pronounce your name wrong. Is it Anglesey?
Anglesey, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
how
one
about-
of 5 people in my lifetime that's got it about right.
I got it right.
Ryan Anglesey, I live at 127 Sylvania Road.
Thank you for that.
Have a couple concerns. I'm here representing my wife and a neighbor. We're the only 2 blocks. We're on the east side of Sylvania, and our neighbor couldn't be here, but she's another little block down there on the southeast corner there. She'd like to, but she has the same concerns we do. I know you addressed some of it when you were talking about buffer zones and screening, but we're not here to say no to industrial. I'd rather have industrial than the apartment complex go up next to us. I just have concerns. I do grading work for my living, and the way they'd have to do that, they'd have to move a lot of dirt, and we're afraid of encroachment to make a level grade across that area. And we're worried about water drainage because that's the way it goes. I don't know if I can get to the environmental map, but there is a pond back there, and of course that's where its water's going to go. And we're kind of right up on that watershed down to that pond, and we're concerned about
He's going to get it for you.
the increase of water movement there. Another thing the developers might need to check out is that pond down there. It is a man-made dam. It is about ready to go. And there is some good wildlife down there.
Are you talking about the pond that's on the north side of the?
Yeah, right there up in the top, not the one at the very top, but yeah, right there. I mean, our house is,
Yeah.
we walk down there a lot and we visit that pond. There's a lot of good fish in there. We don't keep them. But there's a lot of wildlife. We have seen 2 red foxes. I don't know if anyone knows about foxes. The red foxes, they're
I have
slim and-
one in my neighborhood.
They are far in between. They're not very abundant anymore. There has been rumors of a black bear living back in those woods. But yeah, no, we're just worried about. We've seen what the Baileys did, the building across from Montex. They said they were getting a buffer zone, and they clear cut straight up to his property line and actually went below subgrade of the existing grade that was there. So it's like a 15-foot drop right at his line. They said they were going to be getting a barrier wall. They did, but it was on the downhill side. There was no buffer zone or any kind of screening. We are worried about noise. We're requesting a buffer zone, respectful of neighbors. We respect all our neighbors. But yeah, that's about it, I believe.
Any questions for Mr. Anglesey? Thank you, sir.
My wife Emily is on next. You can skip her. She's a little shy.
Richard Monday,
So I'm actually, I'm sorry. I'm
for the
giving
record,
an
your
address.
name and address, please.
Yes, Richard Monday, 206 West 2nd Street, Lexington, North Carolina. I'm a member of the Davidson County Bar, and I actually represent the Angleseys. I wanted them to get up and talk to you first, because this is an issue of concern for them. They are surrounded on 2 sides by this, by the Sylvania Road sections. And Mr. Anglesey didn't quite get into it, but they're first-time homeowners. They found their dream house. It's tucked into the woods. They have woods on their land, but a great deal of that is that area surrounding their property. And so what's going to happen is it's going to get clear cut to the property line, most likely, and with limited buffer put back in. And so they're going to lose that privacy that they paid for when they bought their home. And I understand you don't have a vested right in someone else's property and to continue that, but what I think the board can do here is my understanding of statute is that you can dual use one piece of property. So
What, sir?
basically dual use, to keep part of it RA and then part of it light industrial. And I think that they should come back with a plan on how to do that to preserve that northern section of wetland where you have that pond, and as well as to create a better buffer zone. And so we would ask that you reject their current proposal as stated. Again, no one's opposed to industry here. I think this will be a good thing for the county, but I think there should be some consideration for the neighbors. And if you drive on Sylvania Road, you're not seeing much consideration for the pre-existing homeowners. And if anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise,
Any questions for Mr. Monday? Mr. Ahern mentioned someone else that showed up late that didn't get a chance to sign up. Is that you, sir? Would you like to come and speak, or? For the record, please state your name and address.
My name's Dwayne Thompson.
Slow down, I got to add you to the roster here. What's your name? And what is your address?
227 Boone Road.
And your phone number? Okay. And what is it that you'd like the planning board to know?
Well, first of all, this is the first time I've been notified of anything that's been going on next to our house. We haven't got any communication from the county or anything that we've rezoned this.
Oh, it hasn't been rezoned, that's why we're here.
Designated, whatever you want to call this, a construction site or economic zone, whatever it is, but we've been affected by it already. This is the first notice we've received of it, here and there. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think the neighbors should be kept informed of what's going on and everything, and we haven't been. Second of all, that's my well that's 40 feet deep, so I do have a big concern about that. What's going on? I realize you said city water, but that's still here and there that it could, my well is so shallow, it's not going to take much to affect my well. That's a major concern for me. Second of all is the road. I know it's already there, but if you're building whatever company he's going to put there, the traffic on Boone Road, eventually you're going to say that road's not sufficient for that. You're going to eat into my property again. It's already been eat into once, widening the road. If you put two businesses on that road with however many employees, 200 employees each, driving up and down that road, it ain't going to take long till y'all realize that road's not sufficient for that. So that's a concern. Other thing is, I don't know how to call you, but Miss Julie Tabbitt, you said in your motion the last time for the previous thing that you took in consideration the land that was around it in your motion, that it was consistent. Well, how is this consistent if I'm residential protected? You're going to build a light industrial beside of me. That's not consistent. So I don't get the similarities there or the disparity there.
Well, the land use plan allows for it. That's
what I'm saying. She used that as a reference.
The last rezoning request was a conditional rezoning. This is a straight rezoning. There are no conditions. We can't impose conditions on a straight rezoning.
Whatever. I don't know what that means, but I'm just saying, I heard you just say it. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not trying to fuss. I'm just saying that don't comprehend to me that you used in your motion the very last motion you just made, you said it was consistent with the land around it. Well,
consistent with the land use plan.
No, it's
you said around it.
And we can go back, of course, the motion is there. What we do when making these decisions is we follow the land use plan, we follow the statutes, we take into consideration staff recommendations, we take heavily into consideration what this will do for not only the growth of our county or we also look at what's going to happen to the folks around you. We do not do this lightly. We do not do this just because we like business, because we look at a lot of different cases, and no case is really related to another one. What happened across, what they were asking for across the road is irrelevant as to what they're asking for here. So a very long time ago, and I'm sorry you haven't gotten notification, 220 became a corridor, and it's part of a larger land use plan. And those land use plans were considered for well over a year and with public input. So my recommendation is these things are publicly they're open to the public. You can come anytime you want to. We talk about these things all the time. So what we do is we follow the law. We follow the land use plan because that's our charge and that's our mission. And that's why we're appointed to do this. So if I mention a consistency or inconsistency in a motion that really doesn't have anything to do with this one, we have to go straight off of what the land use plan is, what is allowed within those statutes, and that's how we follow it. So I want you to understand how we make the decision so that you can better understand what sounds sort of inconsistent to you might not necessarily be inconsistent.
Why would you say, I'm not arguing with you, I'm not, but I don't understand why you'd even say that then. If you're saying the consistency around, you wasn't talking about the actual zone that you were rezoning. You were saying that the area around it. Well, why is, and you want to throw that out, why is my residential protected house not being taken into consideration when you're putting in a light industrial beside my house? And that's my question. I realize you're saying you can do it, but why would you do that? I mean, that makes no sense. Why have residential protected housing and turn around and put a business right beside of it? That makes no, I mean, you said the planning board, who would plan that? Who would plan to put a business beside residential protected? It don't make sense. I'm not arguing, but I'm just saying when you said that, it kind of, it sounds, you say you're representing everybody. Well, you got homeowners here that feel like they're not being represented. And I realize we want business. I have no problem. I agree with them. I have no problem with business and everything. But you ought to take care of us. We've been paying taxes and living and dying here for 30 years. We deserve some respect too. Thank you.
I do have one last comment for you, and it's no secret that we can't make everybody happy. And as long as what is asked of us is possible within the constraints or provisions in the county government legislated land use plan, UDO, and state law, we don't have a right to refuse it. It's that simple. And of course, what we decide here is always subject to the approval of the county commissioners. So if you have these concerns, my suggestion would be to attend the meeting where this matter will be heard by the county commissioners and tell them how you feel. They have the final say. All we do is make a recommendation. That being said, I believe that exhausts the speakers for this case. Is there any discussion? Chair recognizes Cindy Hayworth.
And just one other part of that, there are prerequisites in place for buffers and the watersheds, and those are mandatory. the state, it's already set. There's minimum requirements that have to be met. And I will say that the gentleman that spoke talked about Ontex and the development that the company he works for, the Carroll Companies, have done in Rockingham County. And I moved here from Greensboro, and there's a lot of development that was done in Guilford County by this same company. And by being on zoning and a zoning commission there, this company has a reputation of doing not only what's minimally required, but most of the time over and above what's required, because they usually, and I'm not speaking for Mr. Leonard, but just what I know personally of this company, they like to be good neighbors, and I've never seen a case when they were not good neighbors. So you're not really out there by yourself, because there's minimum requirements that will have to be done to protect you, to protect your house, to protect your land, that are already written in the laws and requirements.
If there's no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have one additional question.
I just wanted to maybe make a comment on this one. You know, we have always looked at the broader map on, you know, when dealing with these, and at what point does it stop? Because, you know, to the north, we do have heavy industrial, there is highway commercial, and then below that, we have light industrial. At what point would we say at this place it's now a development? It's now going to be, you know, a parkway for industry. I mean, where are we going to
I
stop
think
that?
we've already done that. We've done that a long time ago. When this corridor was set up, pre all of us sitting up here, this has been in the plan for decades, actually. I remember, you know, growing up on the western side of this county, the talk of what 220 was going to do. And I remember when it was a 2-lane road, and I remember when it was all farmland. And even back then, with just the beginning of widening 220 to 4 lanes, that started the process of this entire corridor before it was even designated as a future interstate. There was, and particularly in this area, in that sort of connector to Stokesdale, and the connector to what was going to be Bryan Boulevard, that's what started this process. And it has been very, very long ago that the vision for this area, particularly since Yates Construction built in that area, that was the springboard for this to become this industrial area.
Well, I mean, I do have concerns about it. I just don't know at what point would we look at the next rezoning and say, you know, when it comes up, this is highway heavy industrial, you know, what do we say when it's surrounded by residential properties, and then we just put in this one here, and, you know, we still have these other residential areas that we were supposed to originally cater to. That was the original focus.
It is a dilemma. We have a dilemma. So how do we protect the people that live there? How do we protect the neighbors? How do we keep their home? And that's what this is. This is not their business. This is their home. How do we keep their home to be the home that they would like it to be and still have progress in our county? That's what makes this difficult. Yeah.
I think we have made progress here with this part, and I just don't know if we've exhausted it at this point. And at what point are we going to see that place just explode? And I know that's what we had planned for, but maybe not in this way. where we're upsetting people, because this has been, and it seems like they, it's one thing for when we rezone these things on a first case basis, and there's no one here, and they talk about the what ifs, and, this is big, bad, and it's coming in. Well, this has already happened to them. And so we're looking at it as, the things that they've mentioned, have they been looked at or discussed about the?
That's why we have staff that vets all of these projects when they come in. That's their job, that's what they do. They do impact studies to see if what's being asked fits in with what's available. Where is it going to stop? Well, I don't see that as an option right now. Just saying we're not going to have any more development in the county. That's ridiculous. So you have to understand that our job here is to determine if what's being asked of us meets the criteria that we have to use to make decisions on whether or not to allow an amendment to the zoning map. That's what we do.
Right, and I think we owe it to the UDO to respect our rural character while also building progress.
That's
And-
why we have a land use plan. All of that was discussed. All of that was in the works for, as Julie said, for years. And when state law mandated that the county change its land use plan, there was an exhaustive effort to upgrade that land use plan, and that's what we have to go by. It's that simple. The UDO is the enforcement arm of the land use plan.
It might be helpful to think of what we have now as the current G3, G2 boundaries as the guide for the next 20 years of where the focus for this development should be going in the G3 class, particularly when it comes to industrial, commercial, and higher density residential. And that's essentially a small corridor around this southwest quadrant, around the corridor 220, 68, and in that area. That's where we're seeing the most pressure. That's where the area has been identified for improvements in water and sewer infrastructure to support this. But sort of that G3 bubble and the G2 bubble around it can be seen as a guide, at least, I think, if that helps conceptualize a little bit, maybe. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as well.
Chair recognizes James Fink.
Well, in trying to find a happy medium with a couple of these, I realize we can't put conditions on this, but, and I echo Julie and said it earlier as well, Mr. Carroll has always, and his companies he represents, has always been real gracious and worked well with the neighbors. Would it be possible that Mr. Carroll would agree with the folks on Sylvania that we're going to have a buffer anyway? And I know we can't condition it, but their main concern was that they wouldn't lose some of the trees and that rural aspect of their, I guess it's your backyard, that if they wouldn't clear cut all the way up to the line like has been suggested in a couple other areas, would there be a possibility that those two could come to some kind of agreement to at least positively affect his home? That's a considerable amount of wood line right there.
Thanks for coming forward, sir.
Sure.
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, and, there's a field right behind those woods too, as you see. But we've always tried to work with the neighbors and be good neighbors. We'll do whatever's reasonable. I can't sit here and tell you what's within a 15-foot or a 20-foot or a 30-foot buffer that's sitting there today. But I can tell you that we will make a reasonable effort to, if we can save a big tree, we're going to save a big tree. I know the topo of the area and so forth, so, we'll make our best effort, and we'll talk to these folks after the meeting. I'll give them my email and phone and extension, and Evan Stone's really the better contact than me. But, yeah, we'll be glad to work with them, and again, something that's reasonable, but not sitting here today knowing exactly.
Right, I understand. Does that help?
That is.
Would that help you all out in any way? I mean, that fixes one problem, potentially. Yeah. And
I will say, since you asked me up here, and I'll be really brief, the other area that they talked about on the Siler property where we're building a spec building now, and we did clear over to their property line, that's because we're having to put a retaining wall in, and we had to put the supports for that wall that go back into the ground. But in the month of April, that's all getting landscaped back. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up of, we just don't cut to the property lines unless we have to for a reason like that.
That's
But
been our experience.
we are putting it back.
And that's been our experience with you as well, I believe, in your companies, that we've seen that, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair will entertain a motion.
The Rockingham County Planning Board has reviewed Case 2022-05, rezoning to light industrial, and adopts the following statements as required by NCGS 160D. After considering the Rockingham County adopted comprehensive plans, the Rockingham County Planning Board recommends approval of Case 2022-05. This action is consistent with the adopted Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The zoning amendment is supported by the intent and descriptions of the G3 land class. The permitted uses in the light industrial district are compatible with the character of existing developments on adjacent parcels and in the neighborhood, and the proposed rezoning conforms to the guidelines, goals, and requirements of the Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan G3 land class and future land use map. The board considers its action in adopting the proposed zoning amendment to be reasonable because the size of the parcel is appropriate for light industrial district. The proposed uses allowed in the district are appropriate for the land, considering its effect upon the land owners, neighbors, and community. The property for the request abuts properties that are currently zoned light industrial, residential, agricultural, and residential protected. Nearby parcels are zoned for a mix of residential, agriculture, commercial, institutional, and industrial uses. The light industrial rezoning is not discordant with the zoning characteristics of the area. On balance, the following factors: number one, the size of the tract in question; number two, the compatibility of the zoning action with a comprehensive plan; number three, the benefits and detriments resulting from the zoning action for the owner of the newly permitted property, the neighbors, and the surrounding community; and four, the relationship between the envisioned permitted uses and the uses currently present in adjacent tracts weigh in favor of approving the proposed zoning amendment.
Second to the motion.
I second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the requested zoning map amendment described in case number 2022-05. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. There is no opposition, so the recommendation will be made to the county commissioners to approve the zoning request, rezoning request. Chair now requests that staff present us the particulars of case number 2022-06.
Whether they paid attention.
They should go fast, no speakers.
That was interesting.
Is number 2022-06. This is your strictly residential request. It's a request from residential protected to residential agricultural tax pin. The location is 144 Deedees Drive in the Wentworth Township. This is a non-conditional rezoning. This parcel, I'll show you, is a little bit unique. The vicinity map shows you where it is. A portion of the parcel along this gray area actually lies within the town of Wentworth that extends up Ashley Loop. it's the depth of the Wentworth jurisdiction is about 400 feet from the edge of the right-of-way to the west regarding this parcel. The Wentworth line, you can see there, stops right about before the address point of 144. So this is sort of a parallel rezoning for the portions of this property that are located in the county. The applicant has requested RP to RA. He has also requested that from the town of Wentworth. Next week, the town of Wentworth Planning Board will hear their portion of this request, which is essentially identical. It's also supported by their land use plan, as it is ours. And the town council will make a decision on the Wentworth portion May 3rd. Our commissioners will hear the final portion May 16th. So there's this concurrent process happening between us and the town. That's why this piece is a little bit unique. But the zoning status is the same in both jurisdictions, the town and the county. It's residential protected.
But most of it's in the county.
But the vast majority of it is in the county as far as acreage goes. The total acreage, I have it about 1.7. I would estimate 25% of that is in Wentworth jurisdiction, just give or take, glancing at this geometric shape here. This is the zoning map in the area. It's pretty much all RP and RA. As you can see on the backside, it's bordered by residential agricultural. The environmental map will show that it's bordered on the back by a creek that is a tributary of a creek that I forgot the name of that I had in my staff report, I thought. It supplies Roach Creek, but it is not located in a floodplain. This portion, this parcel actually, the entirety of it, is located in the Dan River Eden Protected Watershed 4. There's plenty of room on here to build. There shouldn't be any issues with that, but it is something that I like to make a note of. The elevations at Ashley Loop are the edge of the elevations for drainage towards the Dan River Eden watershed intake. The land use plan, this is in the O2 land use class, which is meant specifically for very low density residential uses and agricultural uses. Therefore, the residential agricultural zoning district category for the district. It is recommended that O2 rural lands provide primarily for low-density, single-family residential uses, and the land use plan suggests that these areas should generally be zoned residential agricultural, and a housing variety is targeted as a major goal of this land use plan. We've seen a few of these the past 6 to 8 months. This is one very similar in character to the rest. It's simply a landowner who envisions a broader variety of options in housing. Yeah. And both our ordinance and the Wentworth ordinance in RA provide for that. I don't see that. I was preparing the staff report for this today for the Wentworth Planning Board meeting next Tuesday, and I've already got the staff report done, and their land use plan identifies this as the residential district, essentially meant for single-family housing, which fits in with our use pretty well. So staff is recommending approval. If there are any questions, the applicant is here. Again, yes, Mr. Davila is here. If there are any questions, you can ask them. But again, this is a straight rezoning, no conditions, anything like that. But if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer any. Thank you. Does that make sense that the gray area is Wentworth creeping up and grabbing hold? Okay.
Since the applicant is here, is there any questions for Mr. Davila? No? Any discussion? This appears to be one of the many cases we've handled in the past several months just to improve housing options. So if there's no discussion, we'll go right to motion then.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to motion.
Okay.
The Rockingham County Planning Board has reviewed case 2022-06 rezoning to residential agricultural It adopts the following statements as required by NCGS 160D. After considering Rockingham County's adopted comprehensive plans, the Rockingham County Planning Board recommends approval of case 2022-06. This action is consistent with the adopted Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. This zoning amendment is supported by the intent and descriptions of the O2 land class. The permitted uses in residential agricultural district are compatible with the character of the existing developments on adjacent parcels and in the neighborhood, and the proposed rezoning conforms to the guidelines, goals, and requirements of the Rockingham County Comprehensive Land Use Plan O2 land class and future land use map. The board considers its action in adopting the proposed zoning amendments to be reasonable because A, the size of the parcel is appropriate for a residential agricultural district. B, the proposed uses allowed in the district are appropriate for the land, considering its effect upon landowners, neighbors, and community. C, the property for the request abuts properties that are currently zoned residential agricultural and residential protected. Nearby parcels are zoned for a mix of residential and agricultural industrial uses. The residential agricultural rezoning is not discordant with the zoning characteristics of the area. On balance, the following factors: 1, the size of the tract in question; 2, the compatibility of the zoning action with the comprehensive plan; 3, the benefits and detriments resulting from the zoning action for the owner of the newly permitted property, the neighbors, and surrounding community; and 4, the relationship between the envisioned permitted uses and the uses currently present in adjacent tracts weigh in favor of approving the proposed zoning amendment.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the rezoning request for case number 2022-08. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. There is no opposition, so the zoning map request change is approved. And we will make a recommendation to the county commissioners to further approve this request. That being said, there is no new business this evening. There is no old business this evening.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.